Hey guys. Okay. So my tech issue, and I'm really sorry about this. Let's do this. My tech issue, to be a little more clear, was my friend Kathy Griffin, the comedian and perennial target of right wing lawsuits. She's going to be zooming into my class this morning, my civil procedure class, to talk about the personal jurisdiction case she was involved in. And yes, my lawyer friends, personal jurisdiction, it's a super interesting. My students are super excited, but I had to talk to Kathy about something and I tried to put her off. I'm like, hey, because it was like, just after 8:30 and I'm like, I've got a live show I have to do. But Kathy was like, keep in mind, it is 5:30 or now 5:47 a.m. in Los Angeles, and she's woken up so she can be in my classroom on Zoom with her lawyers and an amicus brief writer at 7:35 her time a.m., 10:35 mine. And so it was a little rude for me to say I have my own show. So please, I am so sorry. Let's get into it. Now, Hunter Biden was pardoned yesterday by his father. And I have seen so many emotional takes about this. So many, well, fuck yes, if Donald Trump is going to pardon a bunch of his cronies who committed a bunch of crimes and the whole damn number of hundreds of people who were arrested, convicted, and are imprisoned at the Capitol, Joe Biden should go ahead and pardon Hunter. That's a fine way to look at it. And by the way, I'm 100% in support of this pardon, but I wish people didn't go there. I wish instead of comparing pardoning Hunter Biden, who was indicted and charged and tried and pressured for political reasons for crimes that no one else would have been convicted for. I mean, we're going to go through that. To compare that to the rogue gallery of insurrectionists, people who helped Donald Trump interfere in the 2016 election, and a whole lot of white-collar criminals, isn't really fair, and it's unnecessary. So I want to walk you through what I consider a better analysis to think about this. And I would lay this at the feet of the United States Supreme Court. So let's back up. Yesterday, on December 1st, President Joe Biden announced that he was pardoning and signed a pardon and made it public for his son, Hunter Biden. And we're going to walk through that. Note the date, December 1st, 2024, exactly 5 months to the day after SCOTUS, the United States Supreme Court, ruled that presidents are immune from criminal prosecution for anything having to be anything in their core powers. And beyond that, even beyond that, there is presumption of immunity for prosecution for anything that is within their official duties. And that presumption, it's very hard to rebut. Okay, so just to be clear, 5 months to the day, the United States Supreme Court made clear that the pardon power in Article 2 of the Constitution is one of those core duties, and that Congress, that no law of Congress, including the bribery laws, that no law of Congress, nothing that Congress passes, including federal criminal offenses, can ever restrict something like the pardon power. So that happened 5 months ago, guys. And what I would say to you is having that happen 5 months ago is enough reason for Joe Biden to do what he needs to do with regard to anything he wants to do around the pardon power. Okay, so I just want to lay that out there for a moment. Let's start at the beginning, though. Let's just lay out the news that broke last night, right before, I think, 8 p.m. Eastern. Here we go. This is from the White House website, statement from President Joe Biden. And I know that you've seen this, but I am going to tell you what it says. Today, I signed a pardon for my son, Hunter. From the day I took office, I said I would not interfere. Sorry, I just need to make this so I can see it better. I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision making, and I kept my word. even as I have watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted without aggravating factors like use in a crime, without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon as a straw purchaser, people are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a gun form. Those who were late paying their taxes because of serious addictions but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties are typically given non-criminal resolutions. It is clear that Hunter was treated differently. Guys, let me fact check that for a second. Let's deal with the gun charges. Remember that Hunter was charged only that his jury trial. His charges related to guns were filling out a form when he purchased a gun where it says, are you using illegal drugs? And he said no. And that was what it was, plus possessing that gun for something like, I don't know, was it 11 days or something like that? That is almost never charged. It might be tacked on to something else. Okay, he was convicted for that. Secondly, what about the taxes? I think you need to understand a little bit better here about the tax issue. And let me just spell this out, and then I'm going to get to the rest of the statement. The large part of the tax charges against Hunter wasn't that he hid his income. He filled out his tax forms and he said, I owe this amount of money. And he was paying on a plan, on an installment plan, and then he stopped paying. He was not hiding his income. And this is the kind of thing that is resolved with payment plans, with negotiations, sometimes with taking people's assets, not with charging them. Okay, so let's continue with what Joe Biden had to say here. Okay, now, next part. The charges in his cases, Hunter's cases, came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. Then a carefully negotiated plea deal, this is true, and this plea deal was negotiated in 2023, by the way, in the summer. A carefully negotiated plea deal agreed to by the Department of Justice unraveled in the courtroom, with a number of my political opponents in Congress taking credit for bringing political pressure on the process. Had the plea deal held, it would have been a fair, reasonable resolution of Hunter's cases. No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out because he is my son. And that is wrong. There has been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me. And there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. For my entire career, I have followed a simple principle: just tell the American people the truth. They'll be fair-minded. Here's the truth. I believe in the justice system, but as I have wrestled with this, I also believe raw politics has infected this process, and it led to a miscarriage of justice. And once I made this decision this weekend, there was no sense in delaying it further. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. And then we have, finally, this is actually if you look at this is the language of the pardon itself. And for those of you who want to know the legal scope of it, it's a full and unconditional pardon for those offenses against the United States. That means federal offenses, which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1, 2014 through December 1st, 2024. Okay. And of course, that includes the cases that he has been either found guilty of by the jury, that's the gun case, or the plea deal, or the guilty plea he entered into for the tax case. Keep in mind that he had not been sentenced in either yet. The first sentencing was supposed to be December 4th, which is this Wednesday, and the next one in mid-December. Now, also to add, already, Hunter Biden, this is his declaration in support of his notice of pardon. He tells the court last night that Joe Biden had pardoned him and that he formally has accepted that pardon. So this case should now be dismissed. Now, I need to again give you more of the facts, but I want to, before I give you the facts to explain to you why this was a worthy case for a pardon, I want to explain to you the pardon power and how whatever we thought of that pardon power changed on July 1. So let's just start with that. This is Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1. Okay, Article 2 is the power of the executive branch, meaning here, the president. The president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments under any subject related to the duties of their respective offices. Okay, fine. Let's get to the pardon clause. And he, meaning the president, shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. Okay, let's go on. This is now a little additional information for you. Now, let me, I'm going to remove this from the stage for 1 minute. That last part, except in the cases of impeachment, means if Congress has impeached someone, and let's say also House has impeached, Senate has convicted and removed someone from office, let's say it's a judge or somebody else, that is not, the pardon power does not extend to that. Fine. Okay, let's continue with this. And I'm just going to blow this up for you a little bit. So this is from the Constitution Annotated. It's a website. It's pretty neutral. And I want to explain to you, this is, what the basic pardon power is. This is even before July 1. So the Constitution establishes the president's authority to grant clemency, okay, encompassing not only pardons of individuals, but several other forms of relief from criminal punishment as well. The power, which has historical roots in early English law, has been recognized by the Supreme Court as quite broad. There's an old case from 1886 entitled In Parte Garland, no relationship that I'm aware of. The court referred to, although Merrick Garland does have very antiquated ideas about the law, this is not the same man from 1886. Anyhow, in this case, the Supreme Court referred to the president's authority to pardon as unlimited, except in cases of impeachment extending to, quote, every offense known to law, end quote, and that it can be exercised either before legal proceedings are taken or during their pendency or after conviction and judgment. And then even later, the court wrote that the broad power conferred in the Constitution gives the president plenary authority to forgive a convicted person in part or entirely, to reduce a penalty in terms of a specified number of years, or to alter it with certain conditions, and of course, except for impeachment. Now, fine. And again, I'm going to dig a little deeper 1 second into some specifics about the corruption around Hunter's case. I've already talked to you about the facts of the case, right? The two cases, they should never have been indicted. I need to tell you what happened that was really political in nature and unfair. But before I get to that, let's talk about the U.S. Supreme Court. July 1, 5 months to the day before Joe Biden's pardon is announced. Okay. And here we have this. I'm going to start with this and I'm going to go deeper. You'll be able to read this in a second. Last night at 9:43 p.m. when I was ranting over on Blue Sky, I said this. Now I want to show you something here. You might notice under my name a red check and then a globe. I've been verified by this guy Hunter on Blue Sky, Hunter Walker, who's doing these verifications, and you can change your Blue Sky settings so you can see when people are verified. The globe means journalist, etc. Okay, here's what I wrote last night. Does pearl clutching interfere with memory? Pearl clutching, I'm referring to everyone, all these people freaking out. Well, this is a terrible thing. I saw so many things on Blue Sky last night where people I respected saying, well, this is awful. It makes it so much harder for us in the future, trying to preserve norms. Now Donald Trump will feel like he has permission to pardon whomever he wants. as if he didn't do that anyway and wouldn't do that in the future. So I said, does pearl clutching interfere with memory? 5 months ago, on July 1, SCOTUS ruled that the president's pardon power is so absolute that even Congress cannot limit it. Biden can and should use that power as he sees fit, as will Donald Trump. Elections have consequences. Now, let me blow this up. Here's sort of from the beginning of that decision. This is where the court says, we conclude that under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power requires that a former president have some immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts during his tenure in office, as at least with respect to the president's exercise of his core constitutional powers. This immunity must be absolute. As for his remaining official actions, he is also entitled to immunity. Okay, now, and then they said they weren't going to, this is their biggest mistake. Their biggest mistake is not actually addressing what Donald Trump did. Now, regarding those other issues, they don't need to decide whether it's absolute, but a presumption of immunity is sufficient. So what's in that core? In that core, and I've highlighted in yellow, is pardons. Here's when they say Article 2 of the Constitution, this is what I read to you, provides that the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. The president's duties are of unrivaled gravity and breadth. This is from Trump v. Vance in 2020. They include, for example, commanding the armed forces of the United States, granting reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, and so on. Okay, and this is closing in on page 8. In 1870, Congress enacted a provision that prohibited using the presidential's pardons as evidence of restoration of property rights. Chief Justice Chase held that the provision unconstitutional because it impaired the effect of a pardon and thus infringed the constitutional powers of the executive. To the executive alone is entrusted the power of a pardon, and the legislature cannot change the effect of such pardon any more than the executive can change the law. Now, I got to say this. Shut the F up, people. And there are so many of them saying, I can't tell you how many saying, well, Donald Trump breaks the law, breaks the rules, so should Joe Biden. Show me the rule that he broke. Show me where in the Constitution it says the pardon power is limited, that a president cannot pardon their son, cannot pardon their friends, cannot pardon even if the pardon is in violation of a federal law. There is a suggestion, I don't like this suggestion, that even in exchange for money, a president can pardon. Now, that's not what Joe Biden did. So I would like all of the hand-wringers and pearl clutchers and people who concede in advance that this was either unlawful or wrong to actually back up and listen to a lawyer for once. All the political scientists and the TV commentators who want to jump in and say, oh, this is terrible, it violates norms. Oh, those norms. You know what? Over the last, I don't know how many years, people have been repeating like they are little lapdogs, this idea that all norms seem to be good and that we used to have norms and they held people back from doing wrong things. Number one, some norms in our society, like norms, like in normal, have repressed people. There are a lot of norms around gender roles. There are a lot of norms around all kinds of things, right, that have not helped move the society forward. So valuing a norm in and of itself isn't good. Now, you might say, okay, fine. But what about this case? Even if the president has unlimited pardon power, shouldn't he, you may say, restrain himself from doing things that make it appear as if some people are above the law? Okay, newsflash, some people are above the law. The idea that no one is above the law is aspirational. Look around. Look around. And secondly, when it comes to drug-related crimes, both of which, when it comes to someone who's been 5 years sober, don't you think we should do what we can do to lift people up who are restoring their life? The norm around throwing people in prison the norm around prosecutors deciding to prosecute drug crimes and putting people in prison in a place where they become even more addicted and not be able to regain their health, that norm fucking sucks. The norm that we prosecute drug use and drug abuse instead of providing enough facilities for people to become sober. That norm is terrible. Do I need to go on? So when you have people who just reflexively bop, 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 and say that certain norms, oh, this is terrible, maybe they should instead, and I've seen some people do this, say, okay, great. Now Joe Biden should also use his pardon power to help other people who are imprisoned now for drug-related offenses, who instead should be getting treatment. Yeah, that is the way to go with this. And the way the world changes isn't by sacrificing and bending over backwards, sacrificing the life of a wealthy young guy who used all of his privileges in ways that weren't great in some instances, but has gotten his life together. Let that example be that everybody should be treated that way. You are not going to make the lives of the poor and people who don't have power in the society better by making Hunter Biden be the sacrificial lamb. You make their lives better by making their lives better. Okay, now I am on my rant, but let's continue. I got a little more before I've got a bit of other news. Let's actually talk about Hunter Biden's actual case, some details. Okay, and I'm going to share with you my friend Katie Fang, and then I'm going to run through it myself also. Okay. Katie Fang, commentator on MSNBC, good friend, said, why were Hunter Biden's cases unprecedented? 1, Hunter Biden was investigated for 5 years by the Department of Justice. After 5 years of investigation, the Trump-appointed U.S. Attorney David Weiss in Delaware agreed with Hunter's lawyers to a non-prosecution agreement. But Weiss then backpedaled and ended up insisting that Hunter plead guilty to 2 tax misdemeanors for failing to file, and that he enter into pretrial diversion for the gun charge. Hunter agreed to these new terms, and then the 2 sides submitted the written diversion agreement to the court. The deal included a mutually agreed upon immunity provision for Hunter. The federal judge questioned the scope of the immunity provision in the agreement, but she never killed the deal. It wasn't specific enough around dates and times. She asked the parties for clarification of the immunity. That's it, right? Not to throw it out. At the same time, Trump and his cronies went after Weiss full bore. He was publicly attacked and criticized. But instead of clarifying the deal he had negotiated, Weiss reneged on the agreement and offered new terms, and he begged and got Merrick Garland to grant him special counsel status. Hold on for a second. I'll be getting to that. Merrick Garland violated the letter of the law, the letter of the fucking law, when he appointed this guy. Now, some people were up in arms about that, mostly conservatives, saying he didn't have the right to appoint this guy. They thought it was in the bag. I thought Merrick Garland is a buffoon and messing everything up and only pretends to be on the side of fairness and justice. I'll get to that in a minute. Finally, Katie says, Weiss, as special counsel now, then indicted Hunter with 3 felony gun charges in Delaware and 9 tax charges in California. But remember, Weiss originally agreed to non-prosecution agreement before political pressure. What changed? The answer was Donald Trump. He put the pressure on. Now, what am I talking about when I tell you that Merrick Garland violated the law and the appointment of Weiss to a special counsel position was not just inappropriate, but against the rules around special counsels? Let me show you. Let me show you that. No, where do I think I had that right on here. Oh, here we go. Why don't y'all take a look at this? This is a section about the rules. These are rules pursuant to an act of Congress. Qualifications of the special counsel. An individual named as a, and when I say pursuant to Congress, agencies cannot create rules unless they have authority to do so. So here we have 600.3 qualifications of the special counsel, right? These are the rules pursuant to the statute. Now, I want to, it has to be someone with integrity. I'd like you to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and it says, the special counsel shall be selected from outside the United States government. I'm going to repeat that again, just so you hear it. The special counsel shall be selected from outside of the United States government. So number one, Merrick Garland should never have appointed a special counsel. he should have not allowed Weiss to run amok, run wild. He should have said, enough already. You already had a deal. Let's move on. But instead, he violated the rules and appointed Weiss special counsel. And again, it says the special counsel shall be selected from outside the United States government. Now, you may say to me, Jen, so what? I'm going to say to you, so what? Do you remember that one of the cases brought by Jack Smith, the one in Florida for the documents, was thrown out by the judge because she said Jack Smith was not appointed properly, that the statute doesn't even work? Where the hell are people pointing this out? Why is everyone bowing down to the narrative and saying, okay, fine, let Joe Biden violate the rules. Who cares? Joe Biden has not violated a single rule, a single law. He has used his power as the Supreme Court says he may. There is nothing Joe Biden has done that's unlawful. Secondly, as for norms, the norm should be someone is 5.5 years sober, and these are trumped up charges, no pun intended. Let them be. Everybody should get that kind of pardon, that kind of consideration. And 3, where the hell is the yelling and the shouting about Merrick Garland? Now, I am nearly done with my rant. And I've got more for you. I don't need to show you anymore. I think you get the idea here. Now, there is more to talk about. And I'm going to defer our conversation about Kash Patel and even Peter Hegseth's mother until tomorrow, because this is an important enough conversation for you to understand what is happening here. That once again, people are unfortunately misreading the situation. Many because they want to be magnanimous. They want to say that they are being consistent. But as you know, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, a foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds. A foolish consistency. The saying, well, if Joe Biden abuses his pardon power, then this will give permission to Donald Trump to do so. That kind of foolish consistency ignores several things, which is, what does it mean to abuse the pardon power? Arguably, Donald Trump did that himself when he was dangling pardons out before people and saying, keep your mouth shut and you'll get a pardon. We now know that to the extent that happens, it's probably immune. And meanwhile, I'm not saying that I think people should do that. I'm not saying that I think Donald Trump should have done that, but it takes a lot of chutzpah for anyone who paid any attention to what went down here around investigating Hunter Biden. It takes a lot of chutzpah for people who watch other sons of presidents who have serious drug addictions. It takes a lot of chutzpah for people who are clearly, like Elon Musk, not clearly, arguably on a ketamine binge, taking a drug outside of a prescription process, most likely, and abusing it, doing that arguably, and no consequences resulting, to suggest, and hundreds of people, the IRS is cracking down. They've hired all these new agents so that people who owe taxes, who have declared it but have fallen behind in payments, actually make their payments. To suggest that we are now putting all these people in prison because of this is a big lie. I am so glad. I'm going to finish on this. I just realized I do have to have a crazy town, so I'm still going to give you a crazy town, I promise. I'm going to finish on this before crazy town, which is this. It's hard to do, but sometimes it's good to think before we speak. And then also, if we've made a mistake or we have new reflections, to reflect on that, to think about this. But I would beg you to avoid reflexively saying, we used to have norms and those norms were good. And the norms preceded law, and they were a barrier that people shouldn't just hold the letter of the law. They should also respect norms. And I think you need to be less naive about how the world actually operates and how power operates. And also to recognize that I have just spent more time than I should talking about this situation. And this will be the last that I talk about it, because what we have facing us, and this is part of my crazy town, What we have facing us is Donald Trump has nominated to the FBI Kash Patel. Kash Patel, who isn't just someone who is going to be Donald Trump's enforcer, but who also is an inveterate liar. And I'm going to share this with you right here. This comes from yesterday, New York Times, authored by Glenn Thrush, Elizabeth Williamson, and Adam Goldman. And I'm just repeating, this is the middle of the article. Mr. Patel has repeatedly claimed that during this period, he was the lead prosecutor in the government's pursuit of the perpetrators of the 2012 attack on Benghazi, Libya, that killed 4 Americans. Reality, guys, he had no role on the Benghazi trial team. Not only was he not the lead prosecutor, he had no role on the trial team. The pretrial investigation was handled by a team led by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington. In his capacity as a junior prosecutor, he routed arrest warrants and the like up the chain for approval, according to multiple people involved in the case. He's a liar. That seems bad. And that gets us, my friends, to Crazy Town, guys. Let us do it. This is a little Crazy Town. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing? Okay, good. I'm not hearing my Crazy Town. So I guess it's just me. Okay, so I like this Crazy Town music, even though I can't hear it. Okay, let us do this. Let me play. Let me just see if guys, my audio does not want to. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Well, I will play this. Let's look at this. Let us play this. Hold on one second, guys.